Both of us have served as pastors in churches around the country. This book flows out of our desire to equip Christians who don't have extensive biblical or theological training to think critically and faithfully about the Scriptures and their meaning for us in the 21st century. This is our second book together. Misreading Scripture with Western eyes was our first attempt to bring current scholarly research into conversation with issues of interest to Christians outside the academy. We hope we have had the same success in this volume. In both of our books, we include personal stories because we are convinced stories communicate truth. But this book isn't about us. It's about Paul, that brash, bold apostle to the Gentiles. Introduction. The problems with Paul. The Apostle Paul spent a lot of time defending himself in court and evading arrest. He was hauled before the Roman authorities on several occasions for behaving badly, for disrupting temples and fomenting unrest, charges taken very seriously in the first century. 3 times, that we know of, Jewish leaders hatched a plot to assassinate Paul for speaking against the temple in Jerusalem or against the law of Moses. On at least one occasion, Jews and Gentiles plotted together to snuff out Paul. Acts chapter 14, verses 1 through 7. Jews and Gentiles didn't often see eye to eye, but apparently members of both groups considered the apostle from Tarsus a menace that needed to be silenced. Paul summarizes a few other instances when he faced disciplinary action for his bad behavior. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, and in danger from false believers. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 24 through 26. We might find this record of abuses admirable if we didn't have the nagging feeling that Paul brought some of it on himself. Sure, the Jewish leaders also plotted to have Jesus executed, but when Jesus appeared before Pilate, there was no basis for a charge against him. John chapter 18, verse 38. It is true the 12 disciples are all said to have died martyrs' deaths at the hands of Gentiles, but they managed to preach and teach until the end of their lives without being constantly harassed by Jewish officials. In other words, Paul has the dubious distinction, among the earliest Christians, of irritating everyone at some point, and sometimes everyone all at once. Persecution can be the consequence of faithfulness, but it can also be evidence of orneriness. I, Brandon, understand where Paul's opponents were coming from. There was a time while I was in college that I didn't much care for the Apostle Paul. I believed his writings were Scripture, that they were true and divinely inspired, so I didn't question whether Paul was right about the theology he propounded, but boy did he rub me the wrong way. He struck me as arrogant about his superior spirituality. If someone else thinks they have reasons to put confidence in the flesh, Paul wrote to the Philippians, I have more. He considered himself a Hebrew of Hebrews, and as for righteousness based on the law, faultless. Philippians chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. Want to know how to live the Christian life successfully? Follow my example. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, and become like me, Galatians chapter 4, verse 12. Goodness, aren't we called Christ followers and not Paul followers? In the words of Paul, I heard the arrogance of a handful of church leaders I knew, each of them insisting they were God's man, and that their opinions were therefore divinely inspired. Disagree with me, I could easily imagine Paul saying, and you're disagreeing with God. Paul also had a way of belittling folks that made me bristle. He called the believers in Galatia foolish, Galatians chapter 3, verse 1. In the same letter, he even boasted about confronting a brother publicly. When Cephas, Peter, came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he stood condemned, Galatians chapter 2, verse 11.